G'day and welcome back everybody to another matchup preview for the weekend ahead. I believe it's round 14 in the National Rugby League, so going to be a lot of Origin impacted lineups and team lists and matchup data here. So you're going to have some guys that have the matchup on paper, but when you know that they're filling in for a better player, let's say Dane Laurie filling in for Dylan Edwards, yeah, he's got the matchup, but is Dane Laurie going to do what Dylan Edwards does? I don't reckon, so just keep that in mind as we move through. I'll try and call it out. On an Origin note, you can see my cap, I'm a Queenslander, but I'm probably in the camp where I generally don't really care. I mean, I obviously love when Queensland wins and I root for Queensland, but I'd rather a better NRL product and have less impact through the season that Origin has. Like, I don't want players getting injured in Origin. It always happens. I don't want players missing so many games. It always happens. That's just me. I don't know. I think maybe that's just the fantasy SuperCoach bias in me. I don't know. I just think, and also probably growing up a Broncos fan, always felt like we got pretty hammered by Origin. So that's sort of my bias. But yeah, I'm all about it. Generally speaking, I think it's time we figure out a way to have it not derail the season so much in some capacity. I'm going to run through the matchups. Thanks everyone for your support on the TLT video last night. Some comments there that I really appreciated, some questions that were fun to answer, and all the rest of it. Let's keep this thing moving. If you're here and you enjoy this video of the matchups and the graphics, it does take me some time to run all this data and then put all the data through the model and then update the model graphics and bring the graphics into this stuff. So yeah, it does take a bit of time. So yeah, if you can give the video a like on YouTube, I'd much appreciate it. I think going forward as well, if you're following for TLT and waiver advice, I'm going to post it in the description on that video just to keep the traffic rolling to YouTube, because it's probably the place where I'll do the most content as we go. Obviously, I'll just take everything into podcasting land too, but for next season, I want to do a lot of walkthroughs and draft discussions and ranks and stuff, and I think YouTube's the place I'll call home for that. So yeah, please keep your subscription to me and put the bell on if you're looking to stay updated with stuff, especially into next year. I won't be spamming your feed with too much that isn't helpful, that's for sure. So let's move on. Guys, I'm just going to fix this. Always gets out of sorts. Cool. So I got the graphic here as usual. Game 1 is Dragons v Tigers. On the Dragons side, the best matchup is the left centre. So that is not Zach Lomax. Keep that in mind. He actually has a tough matchup if he backs up. So bear that in mind, Zach Lomax owners. The other good matchups off the top of the list here are the right second rower, which will be... is that Raymond Faitala Mariner? Yeah, that's going to be RFM again, because Leilua, I believe, plays on the left, and I don't think Sewer will back up. Kyle Flanagan has a great matchup, but wouldn't read too much into it. Luciano Leilua has a bad matchup, but being the Tigers, yeah, again, I wouldn't put too much stock into what the data is saying here. And as I mentioned, Zach Lomax has a tough matchup. The right 2RF for the Tigers, which is going to be Papali'i's injured, Bateman's injured. So whoever the heck is lining up on the right edge, I think it's Seyfarth for the portion of the game, has a gun matchup, like the top of the top. The front rowers for the Tigers both have strong matchups. My phone's blowing up, which is annoying. The fullback for the Tigers has a bad matchup, which is Jareem Buller, but he has a tough matchup. I wouldn't be shying away from him though against someone like the Dragons, who could be a bit depleted. And the left half has a neutral matchup for the Tigers, which is Lockie Galvin. So I'd be happily playing Lockie Galvin on this basis. Overall, it is a matchup that is in favour of the Tigers because they've been pretty staunch and the Dragons aren't that great. But I think on both sides of the field, you're probably playing your players with a fair bit of confidence, the ones that you've relied on up until now anyway. For the Dragons, they are dominant in scoring their SuperCoach points in the middle of the field. So are the Tigers, but the Dragons, they trend right after that, and the Tigers trend left, which is Fainu and Lockie Galvin, and I think Justin Olam. The right side for the Dragons is Ben Hunt and Zach Lomax and Sewer typically, I believe. So yeah, look, it'll be a bit of a bludger in respect of the SuperCoach scoring, but the matchup is overall in favour of the Tigers. But yeah, play with confidence, guys. Next game of the weekend is the Titans and the Rabbitohs. Good super coach scoring game here, I believe, in total. For the Titans, the left half, which will be foreign, I reckon, has a gun matchup, and so does Brian Kelly, like the top of the top. The right half, which will be, it'll probably be Jaden Campbell who comes in, but yeah, monitor team lists because currently it's Chris Randall here. They have an elite matchup. The poor matchups is the forward pack for the Titans. For the Rabbitohs, Trell Mitt has an elite matchup, so he's a real good option in Classic and NRL Fantasy and in Draft to captain or VC because it's early in the weekend. The hooker, which is Damien Cook, is also a viable VC. I think I'll chuck it on him. He has an elite matchup, but I know the Titans are more staunch than people have given them credit to. As sort of the season's gone on, they've picked up a little bit. Another great matchup for the front rower here, or the front rowers here for the Rabbitohs. The poor matchups of the front rowers for the Titans, as I mentioned, and we have tough matchups for the left centre for the Bunnies. I couldn't even tell you who that is off the top of my head. And the lock in Kalamatangi this weekend, but I'd be starting him in a heartbeat. There's form data in here, that's why he's going to probably brain it. High scoring potential for the Titans players. As you know, they've got quite a big discrepancy in favour of them from a super coach, like my super coach advanced metric here. The Titans are dominant down their left, which we all know. The Rabbitohs are currently dominant down the middle and then trending left, and the right side gets very little love. But with Cody Walker playing right, that might improve. But right now, the data does not say that is the case. Game 3 is the I'll just go back. I'd be VCing Trell. I'd be looking at a VC if you're stuck like I am with Damien Cook. I'd just be outright captaining David Fafita. Brian Kelly, you could put a VC on him in a pinch if you were stuck, according to this. So yeah, keep that in mind, guys. And Alofi Khan Pereira is a plug and play, obviously, on that left wing. In fact, I should actually play him, but I can't drop anyone. These are the super coach dilemmas. I've got a big bench and I'm still cooked, mate. Like the injuries and Origin is just absolutely cooked. Rightio, moving on, game 3, Cowboys Warriors. For the Cowboys, the left 2RF has a gun matchup. That'll be Lukey or Finafuiaki. I couldn't tell you which one. You'd have to do some research yourself there. The right center wing, which is currently Vilea, has an elite matchup. The left center also has an elite matchup, which it will be Holmes. He will come in for Chester and brain it most likely against the Warriors there. The front rowers have tough matchups for the Cowboys. On the Warriors side, the left half, which will be... Is that Tamari Martin? I don't know which side they line up. Has an elite matchup. Keep your eyes on that one. Elite matchups for the forwards being Adam Fanua-Blake. And this week it's Jackson Ford, so keep that in mind, guys. VC options on Fanua-Blake potentially. Tough matchups for the Cowboys front rowers, as I mentioned. Tough matchup for the right half, whichever that may be, Tamari Martin or Chanel Harris-Tavita. Bad matchup for the right centre, which is Rocco Berry. Overall, pretty high scoring super coach teams here with both teams also not being good defensively from a super coach scoring perspective. My data brings it out as just above marginal in favor of the Cowboys from my advanced metric, and therefore, again, you kind of can. This is sort of self-evident. This one, you're playing both. You're playing players on both sides of the pitch with confidence due to both these teams having their ups and downs. When it comes to attack, though, the Cowboys are left dominant, but they are relatively balanced, and the Warriors are middle dominant, but they're also relatively balanced. So yeah, proceed with confidence with all your players in this one. Guys, game 4 is the Broncos v the Sharks. It could be a belter, but due to injuries and guys who are going to drop out and stuff, it's probably not going to be that good of a game. For the Broncos, the great matchups sit with the right half, which will be Jock Madden, and the right centre wing, which will be Dean Mariner. So play them with confidence, I reckon, boys. The good matchup also for the right centre. So that right edge is just going to be humming, I would suspect. And also you've got Sifa Talakai replacing Teague Wilton there. So potentially even more issues for the Sharkies. So play your right edge Broncos players with a bit of confidence. That means Jordan Ricky is a plug and play potentially as well, guys. On the other hand, the left center and the left 2RF for the Broncos have tough and poor matchups respectively. So, the defense of Nickera on that right edge with Atkinson and Ramian seems pretty solid. For the Sharks, both the right centre, being Ramian and Will Kennedy, have gun top of the top matchups with the left 2RF, which would have been Teague Wilton, but is now Sifat Talakai, just my luck, have elite matchups, and bad matchups for Kyle Ero. I wouldn't read too much into that, though, with the Broncos players. It'll probably drop out. He's running at Stags, which is never any fun, but I'd still be pretty confident in playing my Sharks boys, especially with Braden Trindle running the left side of the field, and Trindle himself has a bad matchup, which is probably fair dinkum. It is a really marginal balance in favour of the Sharks from a Supercoach metric perspective. Both teams are right and middle dominant. The Broncos are dominant in the middle favour, and then they trend right, whereas the Sharks are right dominant, but then they trend middle. Again, I'm playing all my guys in this game, not overthinking it too much. Maybe someone like Trindle isn't the best plug as a half if you have better options. For example, maybe Atkinson's the one you plug in over Trindle if you're picking up off freeze or whatever to do a job for you. And maybe you could run a game 4. Is it a VC game? Maybe still, if it is Madden is potentially a VC. I don't love that though. I don't know how this will go. If Will Kennedy's been dropped, he's a fine plug and play at fullback. He has the matchup. I should play him, but instead I'm going to play Lehigh Hopewadi because I like the thrill of some of the unknown. I don't want Will Kennedy scoring 20 and me telling myself, I told you so. I'd rather Will Kennedy score 80 and Lehigh score 40 and say, oh, well, I was going for the fun play there. That's just me. Game 5, Storm v Knights. We've got a gun matchup for the lock of the Storm, which, as I mentioned in the Discord today, is actually Josh King, who is a viable pickup, guys, as a front rower playing lock. He only needs to play 55 minutes to do a job for you, and any more than that, he's going to do quite a good job. So he's got the matchup this weekend. Left center, Remus Smith has an elite matchup. Again, I'm not really going to go play Remus Smith, don't get me wrong. Front rowers have great matchups for the Storm too. Fullback, tough matchup for Suafa'alongo, but I wouldn't read too much into it. I'd expect the Knights to get brained here, most likely. The right centre has a tough matchup, which is Nick Meaney. The Knights lock has a great matchup. The Knights left half has a great matchup. The right half also has a good matchup, and the front rower and the front rowers and the lock for the Knights. So that forward pack has a bad matchup. So pretty stingy through the middle. The Storm are quite a big discrepancy in favour of the Storm here from my sort of metric here. The Storm, when they're scoring, are left and right dominant, and they're even solid in the middle. They sort of score everywhere, but they're really good down their edges. The Storm, the Knights, they trend toward the left. We've seen Armstrong chime in there, Best, Marju, all that sort of thing. Well, Marju didn't do a job last week, but even the points Hastings scores is on the left, but overall they're pretty balanced, especially with the middle and the right are pretty balanced and even too. Next game is game 6. It's the Panthers v this. Oh, in that game, look, I'd be playing my Storm guys with confidence. I think most people are going to have to play who they have to play because everyone has a bit of Roosters and Finns and whatnot. You'd probably sit Marju if you had a chance, but he was one great Jacob Preston tackle away from scoring 75 plus last weekend. So as depressing as life has been for us Marju owners, he's close. He's just not quite there. Do want to call out that Kai Pearce-Paul and even Dylan Lucas have relatively bad matchups this weekend, but I'll also be playing them. And for the Storm, I do recall when I was plugging in all my data, both edge back rowers for the Storm have strong matchups. So that's your Blore and your Katoa as well. So keep that in mind when you're looking at VCs and Cs and whatnot. Game 6, Panthers v Sea Eagles. On the Panthers side of things, the right edge in general has really strong matchups with whoever's lining up on the right. They've named Liam Martin, but I doubt it will be him. It's probably going to be Liam Henry or Garner, a late call-up. I don't think Garner gets called up. He's still dealing with an injury. But Liam Henry, right half is going to be Jack it's going to be Schneider or Jack Cole. I really don't know which one plays where, actually. I think it's Schneider. And he was clearly rushed back, Schneider, and he was hindered. I'd be playing him and be relatively confident in his performance ability. And the right centre, Tungo, has a good matchup on paper, and he's been really depressing lately. So hopefully he lifts off the back of another poor loss. The bad matchup is for Yo, but I don't think he ends up playing. And the left centre, Alamotti, has a tough matchup, but you'd be playing him with confidence against the Eagles, who, they're not tons of chop when it comes to defending from a SuperCoach perspective. Speaking of the Eels, elite matchup with the right 2RF, who I do expect to play in Ola Kawatu. Great, like he's a potential captaincy option. Both halves, Brooks and DCE, have great matchups. Their bad matchups are with the aforementioned Lehigh Hopewadi and the lock position being Jakey Turbo, who I do believe will back up. I'm playing Lehigh here. It's probably risky, but mate, like matchup data, it's not the be all and end all. That guy, he just needs a try assist to score probably pretty well. Lehigh, yeah, it's a risk, but I'm going to do it, I think, because there's future value in him for me as the Teddy owner, where this is a tough matchup, but weeks following, will be better, and he has good buy coverage, and a guy like that I want to get on this weekend, and if he does poorly, so be it. Whereas if he does well and someone else snags him, then I'm one sort of rung down on the pecking order when it comes to plugging in that Tedesco issue I need to manage. Overall, not a major discrepancy in favour of the Panthers. For some reason, the Eagles have been scoring pretty well and defending pretty well, which doesn't match my eye test, but so be it. I can't say I've paid tons of attention to the Seagulls of late. When the Panthers are scoring, they're dominant down their left. Their preference is their left, but overall they're pretty balanced, as we know. I've spoken about them a lot the last couple of matchup videos, how they've gone left and Luai's scoring trend up and Garner's points, and now Sorensen and Alamotti are really making the left look dominant, even though we do know they prefer their right side attacking shapes. Speaking of the right side, that is where the Seagulls are dominant. I think we've got last game of the round here. Bulldogs v the Eels. Absolute banging matchup, given that the Bulldogs are the current, on form, most staunch SuperCoach defensive team in the league, which is a really weird thing to say out loud, but that's the case. And the Eels, who have been trash, have got their key half and fullback, their key playmakers back, and they look pretty electric, and I just like what I saw last weekend. So this is a really interesting game. Super keen to watch this. On the Bulldogs side, Reid Marnie has a gun matchup, so he's an option in your classic sort of varieties. The lock, which will be Bailey Hayward, I don't know about his minutes, but he has an elite matchup. Right centre in Stephen Crichton, who I believe will back up, has an elite matchup. So yeah, and I think the way I like to think about this is, if Stephen Crichton has an elite matchup, it's pretty likely potentially. Oh, it's not pretty likely, but there's a good chance that Carraz benefits off an opportunity that Crichton can claim through the defensive issues of the player that is defending him, given the data here and given the call out of an elite matchup for Stephen Crichton. So yeah, do like Carraz. Someone had a question last night. I do, but like Carraz as a captain due to his work rate base, and therefore the potential for him to benefit on the outside of a guy with a great matchup. The left 2RF has a bad matchup for the Bulldogs, and the front rowers have poor matchups. On the Eels side, the elite matchup sits with Kelma Tuolangi, and a great matchup for the lock, whoever's playing lock, whether Hopgood is or whatever, not sure. And then the hooker, Brennan Hands, has a neutral matchup. The bad matchups for the Eels are the left centre being Blaze Talangi, who I already don't love his defense either as much as I do love his upside and his general NRL footy juice. He does have the bad matchup this weekend. As I said, the Dogs are being quite staunch. And the right half, Moses, has a bad matchup on paper, but you'd be playing him and captaining him if you had him and you needed to with confidence, I'd reckon, despite what the Bulldogs are putting up. I do think Mitch Moses is shown a bit of form bouncing back from his injury. It's a pretty big discrepancy in favour of the Dogs, and that's due to the fact they're putting up some solid SuperCoach scores with Joshy Curran and Carraz and all that sort of stuff, and therefore the fact they're also stingy in defence means that they're definitely the SuperCoach in favour here. So when it comes to scoring for them, it's down that right edge with Sexton unlocking Critter and Carraz. Is their sort of dominant side, and lately Jamin Salmon's been scoring okay as the right 2RF. So that's why that's the case. And on the Eels side, they're solid. There's pretty like even left and right scoring. As you know, Sivo crosses the line, but then we've got Moses feeding to Cardi and Simonson, and Penasini, who had some decent games lately. So that's sort of the story there. That sort of wraps it up. I'd be playing like a guy like Stephen Crichton that's been really bad all year until sort of lately with Sexton sort of coming in and unlocking him a little bit. You'd be playing him in a matchup like this, even though the Eels looked a bit better, and you'd be playing your sort of Eels guns, even though they don't have the matchup on paper. From a questions perspective, couple of questions have come in late, which I really appreciate, fellas. First one is Wade Egan versus Jaden Brayley rest of the season. It's a 10-team league with finals 22 to 25. Currently holding Egan, but can pick up Brayley on freeze. I don't have room to hold both. Look, really tough spot to be in. Totally sympathise with how you're feeling. It's a matter of like your risk appetite. I know a lot of people can't stand Egan due to the injury risk, and that's from a physical and a HIA perspective. So he's got sort of both problems. For Egan, he also may not play 80 as the season goes on, given that like they're probably going to start carrying a bench hooker potentially. Haven't looked if they have this weekend, but it's something to monitor. He does have better upside than Brayley, but what's upside when you're not on the field? Look, I traded Egan. I put him. There's a guy that happened to have a good hooker on his bench. I put Egan and a guy that he needed in his centre wings in a package and said, listen, I'll give you not a like for like, but a small downgrade as your backup hooker who you're not even playing anyway. And I'll give you this sort of potential gun CTW, and you're fixing your team without much of a loss. And I'm then getting rid of the risk of Egan. And it worked out. So look, that's the thing. If you can gamble that Egan has 2 or 3 good games and you sell him to someone, and say like, oh, look, you know, the Warriors have a good finals run, which is the case, which is the actual case, and you sell him for someone like, I don't know, whoever, that could be an option. But look, I think right now, I think it's Brayley. I think from a risk perspective, we know Brayley has his issues, but they're sort of more physical issues. He's had his HIAs too, Brayley, don't get me wrong, they've both got issues, but look, I'd be going Brayley at least. There's a chance he's a safer bet there, and he has a fine finals run, not as good as Egan's, but the Warriors haven't been red hot themselves. Like, they've been better, but not red hot in the last 2 months. I'd go Brayley, mate, just from a risk perspective, and if Egan has a few good games, so be it, but let him be someone else's headache. That is my opinion there. This one's from Dransy. Dransy, appreciate you, mate. Thanks for being yourself. I know you're dominating your leagues, and love your interactions in the community. Really chatty and all the rest of it. So really good vibes from Dransy. League size 10, round 26 final. Doesn't play major buys. Looking at getting one last CT dubs. Currently have Brian To'o, Ruben Garrick, Manu Alamotti, and Mariner. So he's got the guns, which is sick. But he wants to target another one. So he's got To'o, Garrick, and Manu. That's great. Alamotti, he's nailed that pick up there. So he's got the dual sort of left edge for Panthers. And he's got Mariner. Mariner's definitely more of a plug and play. You can switch when you play Mariner and To'o at the moment, and that sort of thing. Who should I look to target in a trade? Look, it's a great question. It's tough to answer that on the fly, but I would be looking at selling someone like Mariner high, because Broncos do have that bye in the finals, and I don't think you necessarily want to fully commit to a guy like that into the finals run. He also takes, like, even if he scores a try and scores 50, if he has a couple quiet games, maybe someone like Will Penasini, they've got a pretty tough finals run, but they are looking better. And if Moses is healthy, Penasini's great. But the problem with Penasini is he just hit upside, so the owner's not going to want to really shift him. But say he has a couple quiet games, someone like Mariner, you could parcel up. If I just jump into my strength of schedule data, I'll just look at some guys I'll give you some teams, Dransy, and you can think about what center wingers are in here that you can target. So look, Marju, you could target a buy low on Marju, for example. Look, it's not sexy, but the Knights still have a solid run. Like, they play the Tigers, tough game against the Sharks, then they play the Rabbitohs and then the Titans in your grand final. I think the Titans are more sort of staunch than, like I mentioned, I think the Titans and Rabbitohs will tighten their product up back into the year. But as far from the information we have right now, he's a solid buy low. Who else would potentially be free? Look, you'd want to slice the Sharks and Roosters, but that's not really realistic. You've got good coverage from Penrith players. Don't think you get your hands on a Storm player. A really good buy low could be DWZ Dransey, but the issue is their run's gotten tough now because they go round 23 Dolphins. I mean, that's probably fine for the Wars. Then they play the Seagulls. It's getting a little tougher. Then they play the Dogs, who have become quite staunch, and they finished with the Sharks. So the Warriors went from having like a gun finals run to now just having like a mediocre one. It's really like sort of the Knights, the Bulldogs, the Sharks, the Roosters, Penrith that I'm targeting. Other serviceable finals runs are sort of the Dragons. I mentioned the Broncos have a bye. Other than that, though, they do have a solid stretch of games. If there's a Titans guy, like if Phil Sammy has a run, you could look at him, but I don't love it. Look, I think you're probably set, mate. Like, I wouldn't be breaking the back, but some buy lows I've mentioned. Yeah, I like Marju, DWZ. But again, you're taking a risk there. All right, the next question that's just rolled in on time. I'm literally answering questions, so good on you, whoever that was. Rest of season for Kinney, goal kicking ? Well, look, if I had the answer to that, then I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be making more money. But the rest, not that I make any money off this, but I'd be in the media or doing something like that if I had the magic 8 ball. Kinney, the question with Kinney, it's look, if Jaden Campbell comes back, he's likely goes to the halves and they run Randall through the middle. But then what happens when Brimson comes back? They're not like, I don't know if they keep Kinney at the back and play Brimson in centres. And he had one really good game, Kinney, but the other games haven't been great. And he was around last year and did sweet fuck all. Like, I don't think he's bad. I'm just saying that, yeah, I don't know what Des thinks of him. Like, and, are they going to sell the season out and just start developing Kinney at fullback? Yeah, he goal kicked the shit out of the ball. Does he keep doing that? Probably, but does Campbell over him in the pecking order when Campbell's in the halves? That is like, yeah, a really great question, and it's an answer that I can't give you. Like, we've seen good things from him, but we've seen some darn mediocre things from him too. What he is, Kinney, is he's a play this week. He's a play probably next week, yada, yada, but he's what I call a luxury stash. Like, if you can keep him, that's the luxury. He's the luxury player that you can risk holding onto, right? But mate, if you've got other bigger things, then you let someone like Kinney go because there's just so many unknowns, and part of SuperCoach draft is just mitigating risk. It's going like, well, I've got two options. One feels more exciting, but what are the real chances? And you're just trying to like make the best informed decision. And right now, we don't have the insight to know whether Kinney has that spot rest of season. If he does, yeah, he might goal kick, but yeah, I can't guarantee that. So I can't answer that question in terms of like for certain, but I think he's a luxury stash, and that's what he's the perfect definition of a luxury stash. Guys, that'll do it. Yeah, hope that potty was helpful. Tried to power through. We're under 30 minutes. It always adds up, these matchups, because there's just a lot of talking to get through. I'll go as fast as I can for you. Thanks again for all the support. I always say that, but yeah, it really means a lot. I just, if you're here or if this comes up in your subscription feed and you happen to sort of watch a little bit of it, but you tend to just watch the waiver TLT video, just chuck it a like. That means a lot. And make sure you're subbed if you've been around. That always is obviously the goal here. So thanks a lot, guys. Best of luck in your matchups. Again, you got to keep your eye on TLT this weekend. So much chaos is going to happen. If you're in your classic, in your fantasy formats, save your trades, boys. Just a lot to chop and change, a lot of chaos. Evidently, and this buy time, get moving and shaking. A lot of wins can be had with a few decisions and a few if you're willing to cut ties with guys that are sort of on the fringe, it might be time to take a risk for many of us. Best of luck, have a great weekend, and we'll talk again next week or in the Discord or on Twitter, boys. Thanks for the questions too, lads, and see ya.